The spy scandal that almost destroyed McLaren. Spygate 2007. McLaren was caught with 780 pages of Ferrari's technical secrets, triggering the biggest espionage scandal in Formula One history and a $100 million fine that nearly bankrupted the team. The 2007 season was supposed to be McLaren's return to championship glory, with Lewis Hamilton making his debut alongside Fernando Alonso in cars that seemed capable of challenging Ferrari's dominance. But McLaren's sudden competitiveness wasn't just due to brilliant engineering. They had access to Ferrari's most closely guarded technical secrets. Mike Coughlin, McLaren's chief designer, had been receiving detailed technical information from Nigel Stepney, a disgruntled Ferrari mechanic who wanted revenge against his former employers. The stolen documents included everything from Ferrari's weight distribution secrets to their tire strategies, giving McLaren insights into Ferrari's car that Ferrari themselves didn't know McLaren possessed. The scandal broke when Coughlin's wife took the Ferrari documents to a photocopying shop, where an employee recognized the Ferrari logos and reported it to authorities. What followed was the most expensive industrial espionage case in sports history, with the FIA discovering that McLaren had been systematically using Ferrari's intellectual property to develop their own cars. The punishment was unprecedented. McLaren was excluded from the Constructors' Championship and fined $100 million, the largest penalty in sporting history. But the real damage was to the sport's credibility. Fans learned that their favorite teams were willing to steal from each other rather than compete through pure engineering excellence. The FIA tried to contain the scandal by focusing on McLaren's punishment while avoiding deeper questions about how widespread industrial espionage was throughout the paddock. The race that was bought, Crashgate Singapore 2008. Nelson Piquet Jr. deliberately crashed his Renault to hand Fernando Alonso victory through the most cynical manipulation of race results in Formula One history. The 2008 Singapore Grand Prix was Formula One's inaugural night race, a spectacular showcase that was supposed to demonstrate the sport's innovation and global appeal. Fernando Alonso's victory seemed like a masterclass in strategy and racecraft, with the Spaniard capitalizing on a perfectly timed safety car to claim an unlikely win. But the race was a lie. Renault team principal Flavio Briatore and engineering director Pat Simons had instructed Piquet to crash on lap 14, knowing exactly when Alonso would need to pit for fuel. The crash was deliberate, premeditated, and designed to steal a victory that Alonso had no right to win through legitimate racing. For over a year, nobody knew. Alonso celebrated, Renault collected prize money, and Formula One moved on, believing it had witnessed genuine competition. The truth only emerged when Piquet, dropped by the team and facing his own legal troubles, confessed to the FIA in exchange for immunity from prosecution. The revelation sent shockwaves through Formula One that extended far beyond immediate penalties. If one race could be fixed so blatantly, how many others had been manipulated? Briatore and Simons were banned from the sport, but the real damage was to fan trust in the authenticity of Formula One competition. The FIA's investigation was limited in scope, focusing only on the Singapore incident while avoiding broader questions about race manipulation that might have revealed additional scandals too damaging for the sport to survive. The budget cap breach that exposed everything. Red Bull's financial cheating. 2021. Red Bull exceeded Formula One's budget cap by millions of dollars, gaining competitive advantages through financial rule-breaking that helped Max Verstappen win his first championship. The 2021 season introduced Formula One's first comprehensive budget cap, designed to level the playing field between wealthy teams and their less financially endowed competitors. The $145 million limit was supposed to ensure that championships would be won through engineering brilliance and driver skill rather than pure spending power. But Red Bull treated the budget cap like a suggestion rather than a regulation, spending significantly more than the allowed limit while using creative accounting to hide their violations. The overspending gave them development advantages that contributed to their competitive resurgence and Verstappen's championship victory. The breach wasn't discovered until late 2022, long after Verstappen had been crowned champion, and Red Bull had established their current dominance. The FIA found that Red Bull had exceeded the cap by several $million, gaining aerodynamic and operational advantages that their competitors couldn't match within the regulated spending limits. The punishment was laughably inadequate, a $7 million fine and reduced wind tunnel time that barely affected Red Bull's development capabilities. The penalty was so lenient that rival teams argued it effectively encouraged budget cap violations by demonstrating that the rewards outweighed the consequences. The scandal revealed that Formula One's financial regulations were toothless, with enforcement mechanisms that allowed teams to cheat with minimal consequences while gaining competitive advantages that could determine championship outcomes. The fuel flow fiction, Red Bull's sensor sabotage, 2014. Red Bull deliberately ignored FIA fuel flow sensors and manipulated their fuel systems to gain illegal performance advantages, then claimed the sensors were malfunctioning when caught. The 2014 season introduced hybrid power units with strict fuel flow limitations designed to promote efficiency and technological development. Teams were required to use FIA-mandated sensors that monitored fuel consumption in real time, ensuring compliance with regulations that limited fuel flow to 100 kilograms per hour. But Red Bull developed sophisticated systems that could bypass or manipulate the fuel flow sensors, allowing them to exceed the legal limits while making it appear that their cars were compliant with regulations. The system was so sophisticated that it could alter sensor readings in real time, creating false data that showed legal fuel flow rates while the car was actually consuming significantly more fuel. The scheme was discovered at the Australian Grand Prix when Daniel Ricciardo was disqualified from second place after race officials detected discrepancies between Red Bull's fuel flow data and other monitoring systems. Red Bull claimed their own sensors were more accurate than the FIA's equipment, but further investigation revealed systematic manipulation of fuel flow monitoring. The controversy exposed fundamental problems with Formula One's technical policing, demonstrating how teams could use sophisticated technology to circumvent regulations while maintaining plausible deniability about their rule-breaking activities. The FIA's response was to enhance fuel flow monitoring while avoiding broader questions about how many other technical regulations were being systematically violated through similar technological manipulation. The Ferrari engine mystery, the horsepower that vanished, 2019. Ferrari's 2019 engine advantage was so suspicious that the FIA reached a secret settlement rather than publicly reveal what they discovered about illegal performance gains. The 2019 season was defined by Ferrari's straight-line speed advantage that was so pronounced even Mercedes and Red Bull couldn't explain it. Ferrari cars would fly past competitors on straights, gaining tenths of seconds that shouldn't have been possible with the same fuel flow regulations as everyone else. Ferrari had developed a system that could manipulate fuel flow between sensor measurements, effectively allowing them to exceed the legal 100 kilograms per hour limit during crucial moments while maintaining overall compliance with monitoring systems. The technique was so sophisticated that it took the FIA months to understand how it worked. But instead of announcing penalties and technical infringements, the FIA reached a secret settlement with Ferrari that was never made public. Immediately after the confidential agreement, Ferrari's performance collapsed dramatically, with cars that had been winning races suddenly struggling to score points. The secret settlement created a scandal worse than any public punishment would have been. Rival teams demanded transparency about what Ferrari had been doing and why they weren't being penalized like other teams caught cheating. The FIA's refusal to explain the settlement led to accusations of favoritism and corruption. The mystery settlement revealed that some teams were considered too important to the sport to face public punishment, with the FIA willing to make secret deals rather than acknowledge rule-breaking that might damage Formula One's credibility or commercial relationships. The mass damper that worked too well. Renault's banned innovation, 2006. Renault developed a revolutionary mass damper system that gave Fernando Alonso such a cornering advantage that the FIA banned it mid-season to prevent them from running away with the championship. The 2006 season belonged to Alonso and Renault, not because they had the fastest car or most powerful engine, but because they developed a mass damper system that made their car handle differently through corners than anyone else's. The technology kept the car's contact patch more consistent, giving Alonso grip advantages that seemed to defy physics. The mass damper was a weight inside the car that moved to counteract the car's natural oscillations, keeping the tires in contact with the track surface more effectively than any conventional suspension system. It was pure mechanical genius that gave Renault a competitive edge through engineering innovation. But rival teams protested that the system was effectively a movable aerodynamic device disguised as suspension technology. The FIA agreed and banned the mass damper mid-season, just as Renault had built a championship-winning advantage through superior engineering. The timing of the ban was suspicious enough to generate conspiracy theories about whether the FIA was manipulating technical regulations to create closer championship battles. Renault's advantage disappeared overnight, turning a potential runaway championship into a close fight that was better for television and commercial interests. The mass damper controversy revealed how innovation could be retroactively declared illegal when it became too effective, demonstrating that the FIA's technical regulations were more about maintaining competitive balance than rewarding engineering excellence. The flexible wings that weren't supposed to flex. Red Bull's aerodynamic loopholes 2010 to 2011. Red Bull designed wings that passed every FIA test while bending at high speed in ways that gave them massive aerodynamic advantages other teams couldn't replicate. The 2010 and 2011 seasons were dominated by Red Bull's ability to find speed that didn't exist in other teams' designs. Their advantage was most obvious on high-speed circuits, where aerodynamic efficiency mattered more than raw power, suggesting they had found something their competitors couldn't understand. Rival teams noticed that Red Bull's wings behaved differently at speed, flexing in ways that reduced drag on straights while maintaining downforce in corners. The effect was worth several tenths per lap, a massive advantage that seemed to come from nowhere. The regulations required wings to be rigid, but they also specified the exact tests used to verify rigidity. Red Bull had designed wings that passed every mandated test while still flexing under the different loads experienced during actual racing at 200 miles per hour. When stationary in the garage under FIA load tests, Red Bull's wings remained perfectly rigid. At racing speeds on track, they transformed into aerodynamic masterpieces that bent just enough to provide significant advantages without technically violating any written regulations. The FIA's response was to introduce new tests and more stringent requirements, but Red Bull kept adapting their designs to pass new tests while maintaining their performance advantage. The cat-and-mouse game continued for months, with each new regulation spawning new Red Bull innovations. The tires that told the future. Michelin's Indianapolis disaster, 2005. Michelin brought tires to Indianapolis that were unsafe for racing, but instead of admitting their mistake, they created a political crisis that turned the US Grand Prix into Formula One's most embarrassing day. The 2005 United States Grand Prix was supposed to showcase Formula One to American audiences, but instead it became a demonstration of how political stubbornness could turn a sporting event into a farce that insulted everyone involved. Michelin discovered during practice that their tires were failing catastrophically on Indianapolis's high-speed banking, creating safety risks that made racing impossible at competitive speeds. But instead of accepting responsibility and finding solutions, Michelin created a political crisis by demanding circuit modifications and rule changes. The tire company proposed installing a chicane to slow cars through the dangerous banking, fundamentally altering the circuit characteristics mid-weekend. When this was rejected, they suggested allowing tire changes during safety car periods, effectively rewriting the sporting regulations to accommodate their technical failure. Race day arrived with no resolution, leading to the sport's most humiliating moment when 14 cars pulled into the pits after the formation lap, leaving only 6 competitors to contest what became a parade rather than a race. The fans who had paid to watch Formula One were left with a mockery that satisfied nobody. The political finger-pointing that followed revealed how quickly Formula One could prioritize corporate face-saving over sporting integrity, with various parties more concerned about avoiding blame than acknowledging their collective failure to provide fans with legitimate competition. The team orders that weren't supposed to exist. Ferrari's Austria humiliation, 2002. Ferrari ordered Rubens Barrichello to hand victory to Michael Schumacher on the final straight, creating such obvious manipulation that it forced the FIA to ban team orders entirely. The 2002 Austrian Grand Prix was unfolding as a perfect demonstration of Ferrari's dominance when the team decided that legitimate racing wasn't enough. They needed to orchestrate the result to ensure their preferred driver won. Barrichello had controlled the race from pole position, while Schumacher recovered from strategic disadvantages. With the championship already effectively decided in Schumacher's favor, the race result meant nothing for the title fight, but everything for Ferrari's internal politics. The order came on the final straight with devastating clarity. Barrichello, leading comfortably, was told to move aside and let Schumacher win a race that the German hadn't earned through racing. The manipulation was so blatant that it felt like watching a scripted performance rather than competitive sport. The crowd's reaction was immediate and furious, with boos raining down during the podium ceremony, as Schumacher tried unsuccessfully to give the trophy to Barrichello in a gesture that felt more insulting than generous. The incident exposed Ferrari's cynical approach to racing as corporate theatre. The FIA responded by banning team orders entirely, but enforcement proved impossible when teams learned to communicate instructions through coded language and strategic manipulation rather than direct commands. The bribes that built an empire, Bernie Ecclestone's corruption network. Bernie Ecclestone admitted to paying a $44 million bribe to a German banker while building Formula One's commercial empire through systematic corruption that influenced everything from television rights to race hosting deals. Ecclestone's transformation of Formula One from niche motorsport into global entertainment empire was built on a foundation of bribes, kickbacks, and corrupt payments that influenced decisions across multiple decades and dozens of countries. The most documented case involved Gerhard Gribkowski, a German banker who controlled the sale of Formula One's commercial rights. Ecclestone paid Gribkowski $44 million in bribes to ensure the rights went to a buyer that would maintain Ecclestone's control over the sport's commercial operations. But the Gribkowski case was just one example of systematic corruption that extended far beyond single transactions. Court documents revealed evidence of payments to officials, politicians, and decision-makers that had influenced virtually every aspect of Formula One's commercial development during Ecclestone's tenure. The corruption network was so pervasive that legitimate business relationships became indistinguishable from corrupt ones, with participants often unaware whether their involvement was based on merit or purchased through hidden payments they never witnessed. Ecclestone eventually faced criminal charges in multiple jurisdictions, but by then, Formula One's commercial structure had been shaped by decades of decisions influenced by systematic corruption that was impossible to separate from legitimate business development.